Okay, so what I'm going to do for this talk is I'm actually going to live code a beer festival. So I really missed that so I ran this beer festival for the last 10 years. This is the first year that, I guess 9 years, this would have been the 10th year and it's not happening. So I'm going to build a beer festival kind of very quickly on screen. And for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use kind of my low code toolkit, which almost always ends up being Next.js. And for MVPs, I use Airtable. So what I've done here is I've created an Airtable of just so these are real breweries and their beers. So just a bunch of breweries and sorry, here are the breweries, 63 breweries and all their beers. You can have this be whatever you want. And in fact, you could, instead of a beer festival, you could have this be blog posts if you want. Airtable works really well as a fantastic data source. And the other thing about Airtable is that you can go to help and you can click on API documentation and they will give you kind of what it takes to just make API requests to them and what that looks like. So you can say, I want to retrieve a record and here's your library and all that. So what we're going to do here is very quickly build that. So what I have here, so I'm going to actually share a terminal. So this is going to be tough to kind of see all of this. So the first thing I've done here is I've cloned just a basic Next.js application. And when you start running it, it's just going to give you this welcome to Next.js thing. So we don't have too much time to do this. So I'm going to kind of pull what Emerald does on his cooking shows, which is I'm going to start building out things, and then I'll just copy paste working components from other places. So the basic thing first we need to do is we create an env.local file, and then we copy paste the base ID that Airtable gives you over here. And then you also copy paste the API key. If I click show API key, it will show me the API key. So I put that in env.local. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a breweries directory in pages. So I'll make it breweries, if I could type in the right place. And we'll just go there to show that it doesn't work. Okay, so that's just going to be a 404. So in breweries, we'll make an index.js. So it's still going to not work. That's going to give us a slightly different error message. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy paste just a basic page. So I don't know how well you can see this, but this is just a basic page here that just exports a breweries component. It just says 2021 Beer Festival, our breweries, and then it just maps over whatever is given to it. So we're just passing it an empty array, and it's just going to map over to it, and it's going to pass it over to this brewery component. And the brewery component it just looks over whatever is given to it, and it just parses the logo and name, and it just dumps it out. So the fun thing about Next.js is that you could create something called by the way, something that I didn't go over at the top is anything that you put into the end.local file becomes process.end in Next.js when it runs. So you can just construct a base URL and you could construct it. You could pass in your credentials and you could use that as a way to access your API. So the other fun thing about Next.js is you can create something called the get static props function that they talk about. So I will make this a little bigger so you can see it. So you create this function that, so I'm using Axios, and I just grab and I just hit up this breweries endpoint that the API told us about. So, in here where it tells us the /breweries endpoint. So I'm hitting that endpoint and I'm just iterating over the records that it gives me, and I'm just grabbing the name and the logo. And I'm taking that and I'm passing it as page components to this breweries function. So I'm going to hit save, and then some magic is going to happen here where this will now have, wait, that's not fun. Oh, I need to I'm going to restart my my node since I added the credentials. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so it compiles it and it dumps out all of our logos that we had in this breweries table. So it's just listing out everything, the name, the slug, the logo, and all the beers for it. It just dumps it out. And you can kind of see what this data structure looks like. If we go back to this get static props function where we are making that API request and we're passing it here, we could just do a console.log on breweries. And you can see that here's what the API is returning us. Well, that's not what the API is returning us. We're reshaping it into this. But if you want to see what the API is returning us, we'll console.log records, which is what is actually coming to us from the API. And it's going to look like this. So each of these rows in the API, you get kind of this ID field, and you get all these various fields with the name, the logo, the beers as the array, and the slug. Okay, so that is our basic page where we're populating this. But we could also create a secondary page here where when you click into it, and it gets you the details of the breweries. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a secondary page to get the ID, get a specific beer, get a specific brewery rather. So in id.js, so what we're going to do here that's slightly different from the other pages, the other page we just get a list of all the breweries, but in this page we're going to go into the details of a brewery because I want to see what specific beers that a particular brewery has. So in here, I'm going to once again do that copy paste magic, and then we'll go over what exactly it is. So this compiles, and now let's go over what exactly it is. So once again, we declare our API URL at the top. So the thing is, you could refactor all this out into an Airtable utility file if you wanted to, so you don't have this boilerplate all over the place. But just for the sake of this demo, I'm putting it in one place. Then once again, we have our page component that just checks to see if the page hasn't loaded yet. If we don't have a brewery that we're passing to it, it returns a 404. Otherwise, what it does is this time we're passing it a single brewery, and it's going to return you just the details of that brewery, and whatever beers we're giving it, it's going to iterate over the beers that that particular brewery is bringing, and it's just the details of that. Let's see, and then here we have this get static props function the same way that we had for the other file, where this runs statically on the server before your page even loads. So this is a fun feature of Next.js where you could pre-generate all of this. So you're not going to actually be hitting the Airtable API when you push this out to production. So I like doing that. So I like to use the get static props function, and I like to build the website well before I actually send it out. So you could always be serving static pages. Okay, so we have the same thing, get static props. We once again get breweries, but this time instead of every brewery, we are passing in the ID of a specific brewery. So in here, when we clicked on a brewery, this is the ID of this particular row. So if you open this row up, you can see that it has a specific row, a specific ID. So we're giving it an ID, and we're asking the API to give us a specific row. And once again, we reshape it, and then we get all the beers for that brewery. So I've minimized the number of API calls I'm making. So I just get all of the beers available in this Airtable, and then I just find the specific records with Lodash, and then I push it into this thing. So, and then the other thing I'm doing is I'm using another special Next.js function where I'm creating all of the individual paths of each of the brewery files. And I'm going to push all of this code out to a repository so that we can actually, and I'll probably write a blog post about it or something like that. So if you're not familiar with how get static paths and get static props work, that will be a pretty good tool for you. So I'm going to save this. And so what happens here is, and I didn't try to make this really pretty, but what happens here is that we go back here, we have our list of breweries, and then I can click on Burial Beers, actually, okay, breweries. You can click on them and see, oh, they brought these two breweries and these two beers, and they didn't enter the details for one of their beers that they brought last year. I'll go back here, just pick Victory, for example. They are not bringing any beers at all. So you can just see all these details, and all of that details just comes from this table. That is the gist of my entire talk. And I'll make a blog post about this, and I'll put all the code out. But I really, really love using NextJS because I can use an external API like Airtable, which is really easy for me to manage. And I can use it to build all these pages statically well ahead of time and push them upstream, and not have to deal with, oh, am I going to use MySQL for this or something like that? And I've run this beer festival off of Excel and NextJS, or just plain React for years and years now. That's it.